We all know about Eastern European vampires, but did you know that we had our own vampire panic right here in America? Yep. In honor of my new perfumes, Carmilla and Oceans of Time, let's talk vampires. Much like the hysteria that swept Salem in 1692, the fear of vampires swept New England in the 1800s. Over the course of a century, 70 bodies were exhumed to check for signs of vampirism. And if they found a body that was still in good shape, or appeared to still have blood or longer hair or longer fingernails, they would perform a ritual to kill the vampire. The last and most famous case was that of 19-year-old Mercy Brown in 1892 in Rhode Island. About 10 years prior, Mercy's mother died of what was then called consumption. Consumption was what they called tuberculosis back in the day, and it was called that because people would waste away, literally being consumed. A few years later, Mercy's sister also died of consumption, and then Mercy and her brother Edwin both developed signs of the disease in 1891. Mercy's father was desperate to save Edwin, as he was the only son and girls weren't valued. So Edwin was sent to Colorado Springs in the hopes that a change of climate would help his symptoms. He did get better, but poor Mercy died of consumption in January of 1892. Edwin returned home and, of course, started exhibiting symptoms of the disease again. The townspeople were suspicious. While they didn't really use the term vampire in New England at that time, it was believed that the undead would suck the life force from the living, thus making the victim waste away with consumption. George Brown was convinced by the villagers to let them exhume the bodies of his wife and 2 dead daughters. And what did they find? Well, the 2 that had died almost 10 years earlier were, as expected, pretty decomposed, so they were no longer suspects. Mercy, however, who had only died a few months prior in the dead of winter, her body, actually kept in this crypt here, was of course preserved and still looked pretty lifelike. It appeared that her hair and nails had grown. They removed her heart and it still had blood in it, likely from the tuberculosis. So obviously, she was the vampire that was responsible for the deaths of the other members of her family, and was actively making Edwin sick. So they removed her heart and liver, burned them to ash, and then mixed it with water and had Edwin drink it. He temporarily improved, but Edwin ended up dying 2 months later. Now this happened in 1892 and made international headlines. The press were the ones calling Mercy Brown a vampire. And these reports made their way across the pond where Bram Stoker was writing his novel Dracula. It's believed that Stoker had the newspaper clippings about this case and based his character Lucy on Mercy Brown. Not perfume related today, but happy Halloween, friends.